Greetings. My name is Lance Bell. As many of you awake to Friday, the big news is that the United Kingdom voted to leave the European Union. Now, I will admit, even with all the nonsense going on in Congress, I have been following the story. Now, from what I've seen so far, this could be disastrous worldwide from a financial standpoint alone. This even led the British Prime Minister David Cameron to resign, effective in October, stating, and I quote, "The British people have made a very clear decision to take a different path, and as such, I think the country requires fresh leadership to take it in this direction." Let's be real, folks. He does not want to be around if this goes south. South there and it might, As an example, Alex Salmond, the former First Minister of Scotland, openly discussing what should happen.
Well, the logic of a second referendum would be have it during the negotiation period, because you wouldn't want...
So the next
Scotland,
year or two?
Well, the negotiating period is 2 years, and it certainly won't be less than that, and of course that is when Article 50 is invoked. We don't even know which Prime Minister is going to be doing that at the present moment, so you get any time scale from 2.5 years, something like that. But the logic would be for Scotland to remain within the European Union, so access to the marketplace, there was no dislocation. And Nicola Sturgeon has the advantage of being the one politician who's thought through these circumstances, who can provide clear leadership, not just to the people of Scotland, but to companies who are trying to plan forward, to invest in Scotland, to know that in a Scottish context she will pursue and defend access to that marketplace, and she won't allow the livelihoods of Scottish families and Scottish workers to be sacrificed and jeopardised by the incompetence of Westminster politicians. The consequences that have been following this through the Brexiteers and through the Prime Minister losing control of this referendum, the question, the context, the timing, the arguments, and fighting the negative campaign that he fought. And these are consequences that Scotland and Nicola Sturgeon, I'm quite certain, will provide the leadership so that we can face them and secure Scotland's future.
You still do not believe me? The current First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, spoke about what could happen later this year.
Yesterday, Scotland, like London and Northern Ireland, voted overwhelmingly to remain in the European Union. Unfortunately, of course, yesterday's result in Scotland was not echoed across the whole of the United Kingdom. The UK-wide vote to leave the EU is one that I deeply regret. But as First Minister of Scotland, I have a duty to respond not just to the outcome across the UK, but also and in particular to the democratic decision taken by the people of Scotland. As things stand, Scotland faces the prospect of being taken out of the EU against our will. I regard that as democratically unacceptable. I want to make it absolutely clear today that I intend to take all possible steps and explore all options to give effect to how people in Scotland voted. In other words, to secure our continuing place in the EU and in the single market in particular. There are many people who voted against independence in 2014 who are today reassessing their decision. Indeed, a very large number of them have contacted me already. But I think an independence referendum is now highly likely, but I also think it's important that we take time to consider all steps and to have the discussions, not least to assess the response of the European Union to the vote that Scotland expressed yesterday. When the Article 50 process is triggered in 3 months' time, the UK will be on a 2-year path to the EU exit door. If Parliament judges that a second referendum is the best or only way to protect our place in Europe, it must have the option to hold one within that timescale. That means we must act now to protect that position. I can therefore confirm today that in order to protect that position, we will begin to prepare the legislation that would be required to enable a new independence referendum to take place if and when Parliament so decides.
I think that they honestly want to lead the United Kingdom, and if she is correct, if Northern Ireland wants to leave also, it could severely cripple the House of Windsor, and I am not sure they are ready for that. Now, the European Union was thinking that they did not have the votes at the beginning of the week. So much so that European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker basically warned them, and here's what he said.
I have to add that the British policy makers and the British voters have to know that there will be no kind of any renegotiation. We have concluded a deal with the Prime Minister. He got the maximum he could receive, and we gave the maximum we could give, so there will be no kind of renegotiation, nor on the agreement we have found, I think, in February, nor as far as any kind of treaty negotiation are concerned. Out is out.
There's what he said. Out is out. Cannot get any more blunt than that. Now understand that for some people there, it is not all doom and gloom. Here in this video, Nigel Farage, leader of the ardently anti-European Union Party, spoke about what, in his eyes, a win.
It's been a hell of a long journey, this. I first got involved in Eurosceptic politics 25 years ago, and the first election I contested, I managed to beat the late, great, screaming Lord Such by 164 votes, so I didn't come last. And now there are 17 million people that voted for Brexit. It's a victory for ordinary people, decent people. It's a victory against the big merchant banks, against the big businesses, and against big politics. And I'm proud of everybody that had the courage, in the face of all the threats, everything they were told, they had the guts to stand up and do the right thing. The election was won, in my view, in the Midlands and the North, and I think it was the old Labour vote that came to us, and we, particularly as a party, campaigned as hard as we could in those areas. There is still a massive disconnect between Westminster, SW1 and real communities, and the one image I will remember throughout the rest of my life was a woman in Bolton grabbing my hands with tears in her eyes saying, why doesn't David Cameron, why doesn't the government come and see what they've done to my community, what they've done to the prospects for my kids? People here don't understand. They're too wealthy. They don't get what open door mass immigration as a result of EU membership has done to people's wages, to people's availability of getting GP appointments or their kids into local schools. This was the issue ultimately that won this election. So I'm thrilled that we've done this. I believe the other big effect of this election is not what's happened in Britain, but what will happen in the rest of Europe. I mean, in the rest of the EU, Eurosceptic parties never talked about leaving the EU, now they are. An opinion poll in the Netherlands said that a majority there now want to leave. So we may well be close, perhaps, to Nexit. And similarly in Denmark, a majority there are in favour of leaving, so we could be quite close to Dexit. And I'm told the same may apply to Sweden and perhaps Austria and perhaps even Italy too. The EU's failing, the EU's dying. I hope we've knocked the first brick out of the wall. I hope this is the first step towards a Europe of sovereign nation states, trading together, neighbours together, friends together, but without flags, anthems, or useless old unelected presidents. So what happens now? What happens next? Well, 17 million people have said we must leave the European Union. We now need a Brexit government. A government that gets on with the job. A government that begins the renegotiation of our trade relationship. A government that will be mindful that already many of the German car manufacturing unions have said, let's get on and do a deal. Let's go on buying, selling motor cars and wine and cheese with each other. But a government also that at the same time uses the opportunity of Brexit. And the opportunity is we're now freed to start making our own trade deals and associations with the rest of the world. We've left behind, with this result, we've left behind a failing political union. We've given ourselves the chance to rejoin the world in a 21st century global economy. So we need, as I say, a Brexit government. We need the negotiations to start as soon as humanly possible. We need to start thinking globally about our future. And the other thing I think that needs to happen is that June the 23rd needs to become a national bank holiday, and we will call it Independence Day.
Now, for the record, I do not know what will happen. However, on the financial side, here's what some of the experts are saying Friday.
It's costly for, particularly if you see even lower rates for savers, it's costly for the economy, bad for the banks. But then, of course, this question is, what is going to move out? Will things go to Frankfurt or Paris, or will they actually move to New York, which has the ability and the sort of framework around it to really deal with a number of things that London does?
You'd have to say in terms of investment banking within Europe, within the UK, I mean, that's been under the cosh even more so. We're fast moving towards a point where, you know, a handful of US banks will have complete hegemony in investment banking. So again, as in so many other areas, I think the Brexit vote might accelerate a number of trends which are already in place, but a vote to remain equally would not have turned that situation around. In terms of a wholesale decampment of the UK financial sector from London to Frankfurt or Paris or wherever in continental Europe, no, I can't really see that happening. One, because of the sheer scale of that transition. It's something that couldn't conceivably happen overnight in any event. But also, you also have to take into account that most of continental Europe has been deeply sceptical about the Anglo-Saxon market-based financial system.
Folks, I do not know if the quick or a very slow moving train wreck, but only time will tell what happens, and the last thing anyone needs is a complete global market collapse, and that could happen.